The superior man stakes his life on following his will. Uh, these are some pretty challenging times as people are orienting themselves to what do we do now that we've been under kind of COVID for a full year. I've talked to quite a few people that have been deeply impacted by this, and whether it's been through business, through loss of family members, or someone they know has been had contracted it and may have long-term symptoms and disabilities actually as a consequence of it. Myself and my family have been pretty blessed to have navigated this without having a lot of personal impacts. Um, Although I would say in terms of the business impact and just feeling it all around us, um, it's been kind of heavy and oppressive. And that sensation, particularly for masculine beings, is something that's kind of very familiar. So the feeling that you're facing burdensome duties and you're feeling maybe fatigue and anxiety is it's a symptom of our times, but I'd also like to submit that that's really kind of an existential dilemma for most beings when they're in their masculine. When I say they're masculine, you're kind of the witness observer, and the more time we spend in front of Zoom cameras and meet with people virtually, the more that kind of drops us into um, that masculine witness, if you will. Now, it's been helpful for some people. I know there's actually been a bit of a boom for some people who've been able to thrive from working from home. And I think we're going to fundamentally see some real changes in the world in terms of how people relate to work and what actually does it mean that the value I'm giving is kind of coming through these screens. I've been coaching this way for years, but everyone was suddenly thrust into doing majority of their business if you're kind of a more white collar professional or you're doing someone in a creative realm, been forced into this new kind of medium. And philosophically, according to the Taoist traditions, times of oppression are exactly what teaches us this concept of day, which is power and virtue. It's locating within yourself. What is that self position? Who is the you that's experiencing so much of this suffering or this sensation of oppression? It actually brings us a little closer to what is the position of self? And you might find yourself, curious choice of words, you might find yourself in a position a little bit like Ramana Maharshi of contemplating what is this I that's sitting in front of all these Zoom meeting cameras? And why do I feel so oppressed? Everything seems to be happening outside of me. Maybe I've been holed up in my house or apartment or condo, and I know that the world's happening out there, but it's really all arising within consciousness. I mean, we may be in physical isolation. We may have to go out occasionally to get supplies and things. Maybe you're lucky and you're actually in an area of the country that's starting to open up more. It brings us into a focus of a lot of our experience is us evaluating, judging, witnessing. It kind of looks like what people do when they go on maybe silent meditation retreats. Everyone has been collectively kind of thrown into that. And because of the virtual realm of this container, it forces us more into a masculine position. So I would like to invite us to welcome a little bit more of the feminine presence, which would be the feeling without necessarily the words, but there's a knowing and an acknowledgement of the body. So we'll do just 5 minutes of dropping in here, and then I'll open up to Q&A. And this is particularly a practice you can do when you're feeling a bit of that sensation of overwhelm. There's an opportunity to let these exterior swirling forces, which are aspects of probably emotional energy within your own being, that are challenging to get oriented because we usually associate them with objects outside of ourselves. And when we're thrust into a lot more solo time, much like someone who's been on a meditation retreat, you start realizing all these things are aspects of yourself that are arising and being energized by your thinking and your thoughts around it. Now, those swirling forms of energy and emotions are an aspect of self, but it's an aspect of more of the feminine aspect of yourself, which is the feeling, the flow. It's very much, it's the boundary layer between your embodied being, which is, I mean, your physicality of your body, and sensations. So I invite you to close your eyes. Wherever you're at, if you're walking, maybe find a place that you could just stand for a couple minutes. If you're out in nature, feel into your surroundings. As you just close your eyes, be aware of any feeling or sensation of confinement and oppression. Maybe you've been spending a heck of a lot more time in your apartment or home than you are used to. And I want you to locate in your feeling awareness, how do you know that you're being kind of trapped or confined? What is the sensation of that? Where does it particularly register within your body? And notice any resistance. So when you're in the position of examining this, notice any parts of your body that are tense. Do a little scan starting from the top of your forehead, feel your face, down to your jaw, your mouth, your neck, back, your shoulders, your biceps, your rib cage, your sternum. Keep walking down the middle of your lower back, your belly, your belt line, your hips, your glutes, your buttocks, your thighs. Sweep on down to your knees, your shins, ankles, feet. And just from that witnessing, if there's any reactivity or anything that says, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I'm seeing or feeling, softly and gently turn toward that with your awareness. See if you can soften and just allow without having to label it, without having to see if it's positive or negative. Simply let its presence kind of bloom and notice if anything changes. Often within our bodies, very often near the core, the central channel around our spine, there might be some very subtle tension. And as you've done this scan, feel this resilient wave of motion that is your diaphragm as it kind of displaces some of the contents of your abdomen. See if you can feel this wave of breath moving through your body. And then one way to dissolve this self-created illusion of confinement and oppression is to relax. So feeling where the tension is, drop your shoulders, allow your belly to kind of soften, let your breath become a little more belly open. If you need to sigh, maybe swallow, relax your jaw and your throat. Then extend this wave of relaxation outward. So let it travel outward in space. Push it out to the boundary layer of your place of residence or wherever you're at currently. And then push it out through the walls and just let it dissolve like the walls of your building that are totally permeable. Just let this relaxation extend outward, even toward others, maybe passing through any other roommates or people in your household, people that you've been contacting. Just keep that extending outward. And now notice how anything has shifted. I'm looking at many of you who are on camera, and there's been quite a transformation in your outer being. So now feel it from the inside, and whatever you've received from just, feels good to relax, slowly open your eyes and then allow that to kind of beam outward from you. So whatever relief you've received from that, kind of share it just through your eyes. Feel the relaxation from behind your eyes. It's beautiful. An example of consciousness actually kind of following form and then almost dancing with form, in particular the swirling energies of, say, reactivity or desire, or this could even transform the goals you want to get done for the day. There's a place of greater possibility often when we particularly bring awareness all the way down that core central torso of our body, instead of becoming so trapped in the sensory apparatus we call our head. That's where the main sensory stimuli are all centered. And so we get almost trapped inside our heads. The old band Talking Heads was a name joke of all the heads on TV of, newscasts and such. And look at where we've gone to now, where we're all personally doing it. Used to be, that was about professionals who were on screen and had to worry about how they looked, or they had their soft focus filters on or not. And now we're all playing the same game. So we're all transitioning into, we're presenting as, I don't know, pretty shallow, superficial. There's not a lot of information coming through, but you can feel people, and where you can feel a real person underneath this small pixelated vision of someone is you're actually connecting from that inner space. So when we do this cleansing opening in our own somatic wakefulness, we transmit and reveal to others the possibility of this kind of interaction is really just a portal to the inner psychic space of where you're at and experiencing life, experiencing reality, particularly in your own body. So even if you're in a virtual environment like this, practicing with more embodiment type tools in the midst of it adds an aspect of freedom, actually. And hopefully that'll be something that you might play with as you spend your day. Maybe you have a business meeting or something comes afterward. Just remember to access a little bit of that relaxation and notice what kind of creative capacities return to you, as opposed to, we kind of get a little bit of a virtual brain freeze sometimes when we're doing too much of this. So I invite you to toggle back and forth between the physicality and that. Thank you. That was our little intro. So who has a question? Really, the rest of the time is open for you all.
I can come forward.
Yeah, Jonathan.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you.
Yeah. For me, it comes to on the preference side, more on the sexual desire side. I think I'm trying to navigate what it means to work with that in this environment, especially when we're most indoors, and trying to find a balance of like what it means to just not have sex if you don't, and working with that if you're choosing not to. I think there's a mammalian part of me that's like it should go because it's a need. Especially as we started off, I don't know how much of that is just actually just a mental concept, because I think we can go our entire lives, right, without, we'd be fine. So I don't know if that.
That's actually a really good question. So what I would maybe kind of look within is really, what is the purpose of sex? So if there's a real inquiry there around, well, do you need to spend energy acquiring a sexual partner, or can you? How does your body and being respond to having this time alone? It's okay if desire wanes and you don't really feel the desire to get out there and do a lot of online dating or flirting. That's okay. But then if there's a desire to connect, you're also faced with some interesting choices around, is it just my body that wants to run sexual energy? Can I do a solo sexual yoga practice that I could circulate, distribute that energy? Does that, how satisfying is that? And then how would it be different to share that with another person? What, what, what does that add? Um, and it's an interesting question. Now, with David Davis' work, his three-stage model, where it's helpful to frame and view that. So like the first stage is it's about me. So that's where the majority of humans have been through most of evolution. It's why might makes right, and it's a bit of why the structure of society and patriarchy was formed. There's sort of a me focus, and so there's a really powerful competitive thing. The person with the most money and assets tends to get who's a partner who's considered the most desirable in the world, whether that's in beauty or status. And it plays on both sides, masculine and feminine. So the competitive nature and hierarchical structure first stage, that's me. It's a me focus. And what we're looking at society is trying to get to a second stage, really just right at the cusp of the level of integrity where it's equality, where you actually respect other and you can negotiate and get what you want. So there's a transition from, say, pickup orientation in the first stage. What can I get away with? How many, marks on my belt can I notch? To the second stage, let's make this a equitable exchange. What do I really want out of it? Well, I'd like to maybe have the exchange of erotic energy with a person of my liking. And then there's the possibility of sex, and yeah, sex feels good. And I'd like to give you an orgasm, you give me an orgasm. That's what second stage sex looks like. And that's what the explosion of all the dating apps and such. So when it works right, it's the mutual satisfaction of needs. And necessarily, as we move from first stage to second stage, it looks very messy. It has a lot of talking, it has a lot of arguing, and has a lot of we're trying to balance our first stage tendencies. We're here's what I want, here's what you want. Oh shit, let's see if we can work something out, right? Nothing wrong, but actually that's really healthy, and that's why I think we're also seeing a very healthy rise in the ascent of feminine power and leadership in the world. But it's just at the beginning. We're really watching it in our education system now. There's men and boys being left behind. We need to kind of help them, but we're also watching the more we value people working together and talking and coming up with common solutions, that plays more to feminine strengths and masculine dogfighting, honestly. So you're watching kind of inevitable transition, and that gets to a little bit of the I Ching kind of guides us a little bit on oppression around what's the value of these, even messing with trouble of sexuality. Well, there's a possibility of the third stage of kind of spiritual union or the dissolution of these supposed limits. And that's was actually really helpful for me when David A was talking about sexual yoga, as it's not about learning to have these Taoist tricks to last longer in bed. It's not just about mastering the physicality of sex. It's actually very helpful to do. It's a really good second stage practice to, find out what your body's capable of and become kind of an athlete of love and sex. Why not? I mean, get really good at riding mountain bikes, we get really good at doing certain kinds of sports. There's a mastery of the physicality and the relationality of sexuality, which is beautiful. And but that gets kind of empty and meaningless after a while, which is maybe where your question was starting. Um, and the third stage is, why have sex at all? And particularly if you realize that you can have some really hot dates just from this place of consciousness. So I know people have been having some profoundly erotic occurrences through Zoom calls. I used to do this with my wife when she was particularly traveling a lot, but there's a need, there's something that gets exchanged, and it's not just that you're kind of maybe self-pleasuring or having fun with this erotic exchange. There's something happening that someone even willing to set this up. And um, I want to gift, I want to kind of release these limits. And so often third stage sex becomes more of, oh shit, I know this is going to be kind of a tussle. It's going to, it's like I'm getting involved in something messy that's going to maybe restrict me. Maybe I'll actually voluntarily take on a limit. So just so I can kind of transcend it, I can open it. Um, and in the realm of intimacy, often we'll choose a partner we're sexually attracted to because they have similar kind of kinks and closures that we have. It's curious. So we hold the potential for liberating each other. So if you can, using a time of oppression, for instance, you could find the hidden secrets within it of future freedom. And often it's liberating each other from our own reactivity, our own fear, our own glass ceilings that we've imposed on ourselves. An intimate partner, when you're doing this kind of sexual play, will kind of tease those open. They can't help but start poking at the illusory nature of the bullshit of where the second stage plateaus out. Does that help some? So the question about why would you want to have sex is really good, particularly if you're a more masculine oriented being and you've been cooped up, say COVID. Is that a problem if you don't have a desire to get back out there and dating like this is supposed to be the mad 1920s that people are anticipating this summer? No. I would get more clear on what your question is. What do you want? A lot of men will, or women too, will change their desire for even what kind of sexual experiences they want as they awaken more in consciousness, and particularly as they practice more yogically too. If you get better and better at sex, a partner that can only sustain that physicality of sex for a couple minutes becomes less and less interesting. That feels a little more like a sneeze versus maybe a more extended burn. I see you smiling now. It's just once you've really tasted some hotter, deeper connections, and you realize this is not just that I picked the right person to play with, but I'm a bit of a master here and I can evoke that from maybe almost anyone. Then the choice to love or get engaged sexually takes on different implications. It might cost you something, but you get something from it. And so, any follow-ups on that one, John?
No, thank you. I think it's helpful. And I'm just reflecting, I've been checking myself because I've downloaded the dating apps. And then once I actually asked, why did I do that at all? Then I realized that it was more of my first stage. And then I recognized that I actually don't want that right now. And I've actually chosen not to proceed because it's not where I want to put my energy right now. But I have to be intentional about knowing that first. Because if I don't ask the question, like you're saying, the tendency is to download and start swiping. Right? If I don't go deeper and inquire.
Yeah. And that's super attractive to, if you're with feminine beings. I respect that intentionality so much that's it. Even if you're deciding I don't want to necessarily be pursuing sexual relations, that in itself makes you so desirable that you'll have to almost reaffirm that a little bit more. It's really funny. It kind of comes to you. So the less you need something, and that's other significant transaction that happens from that second stage to third stage transition, the neediness. So there's a discussion in all, kind of your relationship therapy and such. It's about getting your needs satisfied. My needs aren't being met. Almost all the self-help kind of online forums and, some really great little Q&A question columns about that. That's almost all usually second stage question. How can I get needs met? Once you learn pretty good at satisfying needs, the game empties out and there's a deeper question of why do you even want to engage it at all? And when you don't need it, usually the answer comes back as it's kind of love. So if you really got to that place where you're almost monastically doing your practice and I'm building my business and I'm meditating, I'm feeling really good, I have no desire sexually, usually you'll find some deep soulful siren maybe who's been really waiting for a super conscious man who's also pretty bored with the whole dating thing that might cross your path. And it'll go, oh, that's interesting. And you'll know you may have just stepped into the possibility for, oh shit, this is what a third stage possibility would look like. You'll both present first, second stage when you meet each other, but that possibility of a third stage might scare the hell out of you and might intrigue you. I mean, that's how I met my current wife. We had that same kind of, oh crap, this is going to go there. And again, it was around the decision, like started your question, why do I even want to do this? Your partner will ferret out if you don't have any clarity on that one. That's actually almost where the third stage happens. What is your intention of even wanting to do this? Is the thing that's spiritually super sexy, and that's met with feminine devotion. So it's not just a flirty, good interaction on Tinder. It's you see someone that's actually willing to kind of surrender their heart, and then the body comes with that. And that's a different. There aren't a lot of that out in the world. So by the way, this thing's exponential, logarithmic. The number of potential people kind of starts dropping a little bit. So it's actually helpful we have these online tools to maybe extend our reach a little further, but it's kind of self-selecting. There's an intelligence in the universe that seems to be running this thing, not you. That's the other thing that happened. First stage, all about me doing it. Second stage is a we doing it. And so you're kind of like, you're picking a good basketball team. You got to have, you want a person that compliments you. And that's why we do, I don't know, Match.com. You want to find a compliment. Third stage, it's almost like who challenges you to really be deep. and that's not necessarily something you put in the profile or you're trying to look. It kind of it pulls you out of that isolationist hermit cave, and it makes the possibility of this like some kind of deep dance that you kind of know you're off on a spiritual journey.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Valdo.
Is it possible to, so let me start differently. You know the context, I'm going to tell pretty briefly. I've been divorced 3.5 years. I have a drive to reconnect with my ex-wife. There are many of my second stage needs that were not met in the relationship. I have since then practiced both second stage, where I'm a lot more able to have conversations about meeting my needs, and also third stage. And so is it possible to be in a third stage practice in which second stage needs are not met?
Absolutely. But you may not be engaged long term. So usually if you're in a long-term partnership, there's some satisfaction of first, second, and third. There's usually kind of a group, because we do have needs. I mean, you would, if you're, I don't know, let's say that you've got a successful business and you work, 10, 12 hours a day, but you're willing to provide, say, most of the financial support in a relationship. And you're terrible in the kitchen. Maybe you're just not, good at taking care of your body. And you kind of appreciate that kind of motherly energy of someone who, puts food in front of you when you've been working too hard, or brings you a glass of water and appreciates how hard you work. I mean, that's a second stage need. And it's nice to have that. If someone doesn't have that, you could still be having very deep spiritual sex. You might have to hire a maid to come in. You might have to, your life may not work in a typical sense, is what I'm saying. So if you had only the third stage, you might really be in a consort relationship, and it might be so polarized that if it weren't for you doing this spiritual sexual practice, you would probably hate each other. But it's possible to have a a very highly energized way of coming together in spiritual practice where you reveal the God truth in each other and you evoke it. And then functionally, you may not be great at living in the same house. And matter of fact, when you get a really polarized third stage relationship, you often find people living in separate locations. And there's more and more of that possibility now. I'm actually seeing some high-powered couples or people that have been, I mean, it doesn't matter what gender or what kind of, you know, orientation you're into, but both individuals have been very powerful, very successful. They have their lives. They may not want to blend families or daily living, but they might really have a deep, powerful connection spiritually and sexually. And they could be at disparate economic levels. Their first stage thing might not even look right. And it wouldn't necessarily have to even look like, you know, the wealthy, like David used the analogy, the Rolex wearing super wealthy, you know, young guy with a Ferrari gets the, you know, model who accompanies him and Khan on a yacht. It wouldn't have to look like that. Matter of fact, these third stage things there might be an age gap. There might be a real difference in say the physical attractiveness, but that first stage, sometimes there's an autumn, summer kind of thing that can happen. It's kind of the way it was done in Tibet a little bit. That could be very, very powerful, but you could be very dysfunctional of trying to ever live together in the same house.
So that is really helpful. Where I might is slightly different is the question I am is, so basically the marriage was not working. So some parts of the marriage that were working great, some parts that were not working. And I've grieved the last 3.5 years. Some of those needs are still needs. And I still have, you know, deep resentment, but I'm able to not somehow, you know, it's no longer pokeable, or I'm not sure to say that. So it doesn't show up the moment it is poked. So my question is more, is it possible to re-engage in a more stage 3 without having healed ahead of time some deep stage 2 needs that somehow should have been met? I'm not sure how to say that.
Yeah, I would say because there's that still need for that, I think that would have to be addressed for it to work out.
Yeah.
As you were talking, can kind of feel in your belly and your solar plexus that, yeah, I mean, I could try to make this work out, but there's still something that's kind of tight.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
if you did get back together with that person, that would be involved probably working through and relaxing open that tension is manifesting, but it's tied to the whole psychic field of all your past. It's not, you can't just mentally mind over matter this thing. The reality of every bit of history you've had will show up in your emotional body and your physical body. So the whole reason why you'd even want to tackle that would probably have to have some kind of third stage pull. But I don't think the model is helpful at that level. So it's useful sometimes to just talk about the individual, the combined we, and then the God angle. So what would God want through your two bodies and your two minds? That is that really part of her purpose, your purpose? And often those questions are answered not from the individual perspective, but as what does the cosmos serve most by? You know what I mean? It's a different frame.
Yeah.
And so the basis of your question still had a fair amount of first and second stage, and that's fine. There's not a hierarchy. We're not trying to get to third stage, and karmically that means that there's an energy that needs to be honored and acknowledged.
So I'm totally in line. The way I'm seeing is that in some ways there was a masculine trying to be of me with a masculine shell of my ex-wife, and things that somehow got worse and worse and worse over the years. So the sense I have is that my becoming more masculine and demanding, not demanding, commanding, somehow inspiring, um, um, saying that I will accept no less than. I'm not sure how to say that. Um, Somehow, even if all of is kind of stage 2 and stage 3 at the same time.
Yeah, it's really more of how the emotional inner game is going down, and this radical honesty about practicing with the reactivity of your nervous system. So that grasping portion of us is wired very deep neurologically. It's actually tied to some of our earliest childhood experiences where, say, the breast was withdrawn from us or we were left too long in the crib, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I could read you a little bit of what the I Ching has something on this. It's really that inner game, which is done from a place of calmness and continual turning back toward just being. And so we talked a little bit yesterday, you know, I kind of used the analogy of the story of Odysseus. Mm-hmm. So when he returned home to the island of Ithaca, he, went ashore disguised. He looked more like an older man, and he went back to his home and ancestral home, and there's all these young suitors trying to hit up on his wife, and he demonstrated a very sagacious, conscious purpose without any showiness. So he was very calm and just, they had some feat of strength, and he strung this archery bow that no one could do because it took so much strength, and he just did it calmly. And they're like, oh shit, well, you think you could actually fire that thing? And they set up the contest. And he goes, this old man competing against these young bucks. And yeah, he just confidently took an arrow and shot it right through his old axe handle. So it was a demonstration, very few words, which you notice in that second stage. It's like talk therapy. We talk a lot. So that almost that whole Odysseus return, he spoke almost nothing. Everyone else is talking. He's demonstrating it through his body, you can feel the calmness in his physicality, and yet it's also just very powerful. So that embodiment of power has transcended the need for the busy mind. Yeah. And he's there to kind of claim love. I mean, he's there because his wife is there, and it's his freaking kingdom, and he deserves to be there. So there's an ownership of kingdoms. You can look at the warrior and magician archetypes and artists and such. This is definitely more of that hero warrior energy. Yeah. And there's a third stage vibration to it, but there's very few words happening inside his mind. So you can almost feel into the character of purpose was being generated and manifest through his body and his breath. Mm-hmm. And the thinking part kind of relaxes. Mm-hmm. And we can do that kind of practice solo, or you can use the engagement with a partner to help. But one of the masculine things is if you're playing the masculine pole sexually and you're meeting, say, with your former wife, and you wanted to demonstrate trust, you would demonstrate that you're in consciousness hearing almost everything she's saying, but you would be communicating that back through your body. And then you would have fewer things that you needed to say, or you would be very clear what your purpose was in that one engagement. Say you had a meeting you set up. She would know absolutely why you called it, what you wanted out of it. And you wouldn't have to talk too much about it. You would be presenting something as maybe a gift or an opportunity or something you wanted to request, and you would be graciously making that request and with full hope that it would be granted, and you wouldn't be, but it was totally, you're not going to get upset if she says no or resist you. It's just fine. You can feel that. So the mental activity and the amount of words and such kind of decays away, and you can do some practices to kind of prepare for those.
Yeah. So that's
you want to kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yesterday when you and I were talking, I told you I feel very relaxed. I have a sense I have to embark on that journey and I need a very small backpack. But this is how I show up that is more important than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're demonstrating, well, when you do that, I mean, look at his body. If you those can see a gallery view, he kind of relaxed. He felt more trustable. There's sort of a, yeah, that would make me feel more comfortable. I would be able to hear someone, particularly if there was any contention from the past of, a lot of us who've had marriages that ended. Um, that's often not an aspect of emotional presentation that we've given them much of, particularly if we had a separation
Mhm.
and there's still some kind of crinkly parts that want to crunch on theirs a little bit.
One of the things that come to me is to reapproach my ex-wife as if her and I had decided to take 3 to 4 years off,
Yeah,
or than, yeah.
but you could feel it's an emotional thing. So you
Yeah.
have to say those words to kind of maybe evoke that space inside you. But the power is actually kind of a spacious openness and relaxation in your being,
Mhm.
and that non-grasping quality, again, profoundly attractive. Like I was talking to Jonathan, it's not like you're trying to get to be this perfect third state dude's going to attract everything. The practice is actually toward freedom and more love. It's just a consequence of it sends to be that you look a lot more attractive in that dimension. And when you really almost given up trying to grab and get anything, the big she acknowledges it, and she's quite happy to see and want to interact with you. And because you don't need it, um, allows her more expression to come up. She feels seen. So it's often one of the greatest gifts we can do in the realm of sexual polarity, is being that loving witness and seeing them better than they could ever acknowledge or see themselves. We have a little hole inside us that, we're invisible to seeing ourselves, but partners can sometimes hold a mirror up and say, no, you look beautiful. Stop that. Come here. I want you to see how awesome you are. And we might do this to, if you're a traditionally heterosexual man, you might mirror that back. It feels really good to receive that back too, though, because, a lot of guys are really hard on themselves and don't see what their strengths actually are too. If a partner can hold that mirror up and say, no, this is what I trust in you. This is why I'd follow you anywhere. Men, I mean, a couple of guys are smiling. A lot of men have never really felt that before, but they have a deep longing for it. So that's one of the ways that the feminine practice can be of confirming and mirroring back what is trustable, deep, and why would you want to be with that guy? It's very little often to do with our looks, but it might be some reflection of how you're caring for your body, how you're communicating consciousness to your body. It's not the specifics of.
Mhm. I agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Mhm.
Yeah, Maddie.
Hey, thanks, Christopher.
Yeah.
I really connected with what you said in the beginning around just the masculine feeling of things needing to be done and completed. And of course, during these times, everybody's feeling this general effect of everything that's going on over the last year. But I did really connect with you from the masculine frame of, to me, I feel that general, okay, there's things that need to be done, there's things that need to be completed. And now I also feel there's an additional layer that is like, okay, now how do we come out of this? And it feels very much like on me to lead us out of this thing, which nobody knows,
Right.
It's like we've never experienced this in a way, So I don't know if I have a specific question, but maybe that can lead you to something, because it's kind of like, it feels like another layer of tasks, and it feels, and I know it's not specifically tasks with me to do it, but I feel the energy of it. Like, help lead me out,
Yeah,
lead
yeah.
us out of this. You know?
No, you're really, you're touching on something very true and very beautiful, by the way, too. I want to mirror this back, because what you're getting at is one of the deep gifts that masculine beings can actually bring to this world that is of real value. Because if you've heard some of David's other talks, women are filling in and taking over more and more of the roles, as they should, as they're actually deserving to have equal and more pay. And we're seeing that everything's changed. So what is it of value that men actually even offer? One of the things there is that idea of, well, maybe it is time to restart something, and you're feeling it. Again, as I was hearing you talk, for me, there's a charge a little bit on my solar plexus. There's a little tingling of kind of uncertainty, or, oh crap, I probably need to lean into this. And I'll read this little bit from the I Ching here. It kind of hits it right on. You must find the great person in yourself where you're strong, clear, and focused. Do not count on what others tell you or believe the voice of collective opinion. Do not trust words to communicate. If you have supportive friends, stay with them. Don't get caught in grudges or negative emotions. The purpose of this isolation is not to make you suffer, but to force you to find your own individual connection to the way. There's a mandate for change hidden in the situation that can show you your true purpose. So think for yourself now. Finding value in what your oppressors say will only exhaust you. But I like that think for yourself now. There's sort of what is that creative spark within you? It's almost like, lighting a single candle kind of thing. And it's you. And that's actually something the feminine is very attracted to, because where do these creative sparks come from? Well, you can claim authorship to it, but for me, I'm sitting meditation, I'm practicing Mahamudra, I'm in profound emptiness. If something flashes to me, I guess there's a neurological trace somewhere that triggered it, but it sure appears like it's coming from some divine source. And the way I even respond sometimes, like, oh shit, I guess I'm kind of called to do that. It's not, it makes it, your guys are nodding. So the ideas come out from the infinite. They arise. And then if you have the courage and the drive, kind of like Odysseus, it's let's raise the sword and actually do this. So you would get the idea, and then having the balls and the courage to actually put it out there, and maybe suggest it to your partner, and realize it's her joy in kind of criticizing it and pushing back against it. That's the way the play between structure and energy is. It really is. I mean, I use the sailing analogy because, it isn't a game unless there's a keel on the boat. If she can just push you sideways, you're not moving anywhere. But if you try to have a direction you're going, all of a sudden she gets very interested. She throws waves at you. She throws wind at you, and you don't know if you can even hang on. And all gets created because you've put a point on the compass so you wanted to point yourself to it. So we're creating it all, and she's willingly like, yeah, the game's on. She's all of a sudden fun. She's excited. You built a boat. Great. I could try to destroy it. And then you'll tell stories about it when you narrowly escaped with your life. Those will be like the most cherished memories of most masculine being. But it's all self-generated. But you get great photos and Instagrams out of it,
Oh, you make me laugh because just all of that. I mean, it's just I mean yes to all of that, and it makes me laugh also because we were speaking about this a little bit last time. I think somebody brought up when am I going to ever have it so I can handle it all? And I responded to that, well, it's never enough. You're never going to get there. And so to me, this feels like another layer of, on top of the general container. Now there's another one. And I feel like I know the answer and the path. It's just like, oh, here's another thing, and it's like, that's it.
Well, there's an existential scope here, Maddie, that you're right on the cusp of really what the essence of consort practice is. So the feminine is wanting to tease and lightly irritate you. I'm not saying I'm necessarily a woman, I'm saying the feminine land of form, to awaken you as conscious. What is your deepest strata of being? So the feminine is always kind of a reawakening you to that. It in a weird way, it's a little bit lonely because it's kind of, for a lot of masculine beings, is going within to your source. It doesn't look a lot different than maybe your deepest meditation practice. And yet it's wonderfully alive because the feminine is energized by your connection to deep open spaciousness. It's actually connected through your heart. So this is bodhicitta. So the more you're resonating with bodhicitta, your heart is wide open and you're expressing it through your physicality. You're just rooted in the infinite. This is what all feminine has been waiting for their whole life. They can't help but love that. And the more you can just rest in it, and then it doesn't shift you into activating your own inner drama, which is another form of mind, which is a form of the feminine. It's your feminine, your mind, that's kind of wants things to be different than they are. As a consort practice, reality is always teasing you into your deepest depth. She's wanting you to awaken. So then you hit a level of where anything you can practice with. It doesn't mean you feel good. You might have really some miserable day, but you smile about it because it's going to pass. I mean, you've had great days and you've had shitty days, and it's just today is one of them where you got a broken back and your shoulders dislocated and you're sunburned and you're rotting on the desert floor. I don't know. It'll change. It's not as big a problem as it seems. So, and then you have the really great days, and you want to cling to those, and as soon as we try to cling, it gets kind of teased from us. So anyway, it's not gloomy though. This is just the nature of this realm, and the more we can allocate precious time for us to stay rooted and grounded. So the other thing I'd feed you back, Matt, is you don't want to be resentful of needing to attend to the demands of the feminine all the time. So set boundaries and limits so that you feel kind of nourished, and then there's sort of game on when you're engaging with her. I used to just pause 5 minutes when I came home from my corporate job in the garage, just a couple minutes. I would turn off the ignition, close the door, I'd let the work flush off of me, and I would go, okay, now I'm going to tangle with my intimate partner. So as soon as I step through the door, I'm going to be practicing something completely different. And it felt good to leave the work stuff behind. Like usually most people drag it with them, but I knew I had game day happening as soon as I walked in, and good Lord, she usually had on some kind of new dress or something. I mean, I had no idea. It really was kind of, I had no idea what was going to happen when it was like a game show. I'd walk through the door and wow, kids are gone. She's wearing a negligee and she's cooking. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a good. And sometimes I open the door, she's moody, she's paying bills, and I'm dog meat. I've just done something really wrong, and shows a chance to demonstrate that, steadiness, and and she needed my penetrating clarity. You know what I mean? It's just, but it doesn't matter. It's just kind of, I portion it out, and you want to make sure you're not resentful. So you just, and then you're back in the position of a little more power too, because you're kind of aware of it. You're not just being battered. Yeah. Anyone else? If Diag or Courtney, if you had any questions, you're more than welcome to jump in and ask.
Thank you. I'm just listening. My husband was here and he just stepped away. So
Yeah.
I'm good, but thank you for this time.
Yeah. If no one has anything else, we can bring us to a close. Go ahead, Walden.
I want to hear more about the ASM.
So yeah, I've got the Ascending the Sacred Mountain men's retreat coming up in September 13, 19. and it's filling up really quite nicely. So what we're going to do is have a 7-day retreat in the mountains of Crestone at the Zen Center there. Beautiful venue. We did this a couple of years ago. We had to cancel last year due to COVID. I have a very thorough COVID protocol set up I can share with you if you've got concerns about that. I'm encouraging everyone to get vaccinated, but we could also do this through testing. We've been very successful at keeping events safe. I'm kind of following a little bit of what the protocol they do here in Hawaii to keep infections down. So we're going to be handling the COVID piece, but this would be an first in-person event we've had in over a year. And be a deep dive into practice. I know I've got anyone who had been there in the past, is there none on the call? We do a lot of intensive practice. So we'd start early in the morning, we practice till late at night. If you're interested in this body of work, particularly in sort of the David Data polarity practices and such, it's a great opportunity to get reflection and to really move these into your body. We'll do a little bit of light yoga. We have interactive practices between the men. We'll do some work outside. It's such an immersive, nourishing experience. I've had just profound glowing reviews from everybody who's attended. It's kind of the essence of my gift forward to everyone. So if you're interested in sexual yoga or meditation, this will be you'll leave with that in your body. You'll know how to access it yourself, and you'll have a deeper tool set to come back and practice in the world, at work, and with your intimate partners. So that's what that's about. I'm also going with my friend Eli Buren. He's another assistant and event producer that I met through the David Data work. And he's been leading for years these retreats in Zion National Park into a pristine, untapped part of that slick rock, sandstone, and amazing vistas. I've known Eli for years. I haven't been able to go out and experience this particular offering of his in the past, but this is the year I'm going to take advantage of doing so. So it's a men's retreat. There'll be a lot of other men there, and we'll be camping. He's going to be catering in, good organic food. And so if you got any questions about that, I got information on my website. You can reach out to me. My event in September 13, 19, it's all catered and cooked by the monks there at the Zen Center. They grow their own food. It's actually, the lineage is from the Zen Center at San Francisco. If you've ever heard of the famous Greens restaurant, they use the same recipes, the same kind of cooking methods. The monks practice this as devotional art. So it's really wonderful to be served and attended to at that facility. And then, and it's got a groove of practice that's been carved over the decades. So it's a very sacred piece of land as well. If you're watching this and maybe part of the other parts of the world, we do have people traveling internationally, have some support services I could provide you on helping to get here. And we'll be recommending, if people are traveling from international, you would at least arrive a day before and have another day afterwards to acclimatize, because it's at altitude. And I've got information about some beautiful attractions and things you can do in the wilderness area around there. So pretty amazing event. Well, thank you for the question, the prompt on that one. Well done. Well, thank you all for showing up. I do have other men's programs that are going to be starting up afterwards, and stay posted with my news list, and I'll start editing and sending some more of these up on YouTube. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week. Bye.